Hi everyone, welcome to the Simplifying Data Migration and Business Processes with Domo ETL. My name is Alex Long. I am from Korn Ferry. I'm a marketing manager there in charge of marketing operations and processes. And with me today is Justin Milheim.
Hi, I'm Justin Milheim. I'm the product manager for data flows here at Domo. I'm excited to speak to you about some of the new updates to Magic ETL.
So I want to set the scene for everyone. This is definitely something that you can do, but this is what our situation was, where we had acquisitions. We actually acquired 3 new companies. We had to bring all of that together with our original data. And this is definitely something you can do too. Domo made this so much easier. It saved us hundreds of hours worth of work and definitely pulled us out of working through Excel alone. So I want to set the scene for everyone because this really came about when we at Korn Ferry acquired 3 new companies as part of a large acquisition. Whenever there's an acquisition, as I'm sure everybody knows, there's a lot to bring together, and especially when it comes to data, just trying to bring all of your databases together, your knowledge. We were told we had about 5 months, a little bit more than 5 months, to completely migrate all of our databases and all of our information from 4 systems down to 1. And this was my literal response. I'm sorry, you want what now? Because that, as anybody who's dealt with those types of migrations knows, is a huge ask, especially when you're doing it on top of your regular day-to-day tasks. So we started off in kind of a pre-production mode. So the first thing we did was we wanted to preserve all the data from all of our systems. And Domo's great for that because we could connect to each of our Marketo instances, Marketo being our marketing automation platform. We were lucky that all 4 companies were using the same platform, which made it nice and easy to bring our data together. And we wanted to make sure we were preserving everything. So kind of in case of emergency break glass situation, we could revert back and start all over if we absolutely have to. This is also just good for long term if we needed to go back 6 months after the migration to look up something. We had it all preserved in Domo. The next thing we had to do was bring all of our information together. So we needed to sit down as a team and look at all the different fields we had. Some of our fields were really easy to kind of coordinate. First name, last name. When you're talking about a marketing database, it's all about people. And in other cases, we had some alignment to go through. So for instance, we had acquisition program name in one platform, and in another, we had acquisition program L. We had to kind of bring all these different things together. There were some fields from other instances that we were going to concatenate to barrel down into one field in our target system. And then we also had to prioritize all of our data too. So for those instances where we had duplicates across multiple platforms, we would be able to choose which data took priority when we were bringing it all together. So this is a screenshot of our actual spreadsheet that we used to do this with. This is of course just a very small amount here. You can see how we've listed all the fields according to each of the different companies, whether or not we needed to normalize anything. So for instance, with country, a really simple example is some platforms were using United States, some were using United States of America. So we had to make sure we were normalized to our target platform. And then for the prioritization, whichever one won. So whether that was coming from a specific system or if that was based on a date when something was updated, things like that. We had to make all of those decisions, and that was the first step. Luckily, this is the last thing that you had to do in Excel, or at least the last big thing you had to do in Excel. This is where Domo comes in for the real win. So to kind of get us out of that Excel hell, we were able to bring all of that information into Domo and then bring it all together so that it was be able to cleanly enter our target database at the end. So you can see this is a screenshot of the flow that we had, or at least one of the flows that we had. We did have to bounce out of a Magic ETL flow into a MySQL flow, back in, do a little bit of manipulation on the side, but this is kind of the big chunk of it that we started with, where we were identifying where we had all of our duplicates. And this also took some normalizations and things like that, kind of narrowed down our data set where we needed to. And this was just kind of getting us started. So this is just identifying duplicates. This is not actually removing those duplicates. So the fun part starts here. This is where we're trying to make sure that we're not losing track of where records came from, while also bringing all of the information together. So the first step for us was, because these are all the same system, they all have the same format for their system identifier, and we had to create a unique system identifier. For this, we just simply put the abbreviation for the origin company database and then the ID for that system. So for instance, it was KF for Korn Ferry -12345. So of course, whenever you're bringing data together, everybody comes to you and says, no, wait, don't, I need that data, I can't lose it. We can't get rid of that. So one of the things we did is we created a lot of archive fields. And by a lot, I mean 3 or 4. So we did create a special field specifically for all of the legacy Salesforce IDs, just so that we'd have that record there in case we ever needed it. Sometimes it's just a little touch of paranoia, planning for the worst, but hoping for the best. So we went ahead and created those. We also created a big concatenated archive field full of data that somebody might want to use when it was in the target system, but didn't necessarily need its own field. From there, we went ahead and deduped all of our records. So what that meant is taking every record we had, comparing based on email addresses, the person's name, company, all of that good stuff, and boiling it all down to one solid record. And so for that, we did have to jump into MySQL, and there's actually quite a bit of other stuff going on in here, just where we're normalizing things like country, and we're using all of that prioritization. It's a pretty complex code, which, truth be told, I did not write myself. Definitely had some help there. But it's definitely something that's going to be very custom depending on normalizations every individual is trying to do and how much you're trying to bring together. So this is kind of where, after we brought all of that information together, we had one big data flow. And for us, we needed to prioritize that data in order to bring it all in appropriately to our target database. So for us, we had to limit our data into 100,000 per day, 100,000 records per day, and only about 10,000 records per import. So what we did is within each individual system, the original system, the person who was what I like to call the expert, or the person who came over from that legacy organization, they went in and used whatever fields they needed to add people to a list. Then we were able to use that list to bring in as a new connector each individual group for prioritization and what order we wanted to bring them into our target database. And then we had to, in order to make sure everything lined up, reset up that unique system identifier, assign a priority in Domo, and then join everything together, which was a lot, truth be told. But at the end, we were able to bring into one data set and then break out that data set based on the prioritization. And then from there, we had to break out even further into smaller bite-sized chunks just because of how much we were able to do at one time. This is something that not everybody would necessarily have to do, for sure. So it's definitely kind of a use case. You may be able to have just one data set and bring everything in at once. We were bringing a little over 2 million records over into our system. Also, this is, of course, right after the pandemic hit. So we're running a lot of new campaigns that we're also trying to happen at the same time. We're trying not to backlog our system too much. We're going over weekends. So we really had to bring these into bite-sized files so we could import one at a time. And that's where a lot of our time actually was spent, was bringing our contacts into our target database, because we had to do such small files at any one time. So before we could even do those imports, we had to coordinate with our CRM team and all the other migration teams that were working on their individual parts of the project. So for us, we had to coordinate with them about what order of operations we were bringing information over. Our Salesforce CRM team, they wanted to bring over the opportunities, which meant they had to bring over some connected contacts, which were also people we were going to bring over. So we coordinated with them so that they would bring over the bare minimum information, and then we would bring the rest of that person's information into the system. And because of the sync that we have between Marketo and Salesforce, that was completely possible. But in order to not create duplicates, we just had to do it in the right order. So we had our big migration weekend, and like the slide says, teamwork does make the dream work. So we just made sure that we were in communication throughout that whole weekend and made sure that everything went off without a hitch, or at least, hopefully without a hitch. So after we had a successful migration, of course, we had more data to bring over. For some companies, that means that you've probably had another acquisition. And in our case, it meant that we were actually decommissioning an auxiliary email service. So we came back into Domo, and this time we were able to clone what we had already done And because ETL 2.0 had come out, it made it so much easier because we were able to use the formula tiles and keep everything in one single ETL flow. And I have Justin Milheim with me to talk about that.
Thank you, Alex. Yeah, this is a feature I'm very excited to talk about, and it's very applicable to Alex's use case here in that it simplifies a lot of the steps that she was performing to make it all accomplishable in one ETL. Domo's new Magic ETL, also referred to as 2.0 or ETL v2, is an exciting new feature that includes a host of other features and functionality within that label, the new Magic ETL. So what that means is on the new engine, we have entirely new processing engine for Magic ETL. This helps improve data flow performance, scalability, and consistency. We've also offered a number of new features, functionality that make working within Magic ETL much easier, and particularly if you're a SQL power user, someone more comfortable with MySQL, Magic ETL will be a lot more exciting to you. We fixed a number of known limitations that were imposed from the legacy engine, and then taking a pause here, we want to make Magic ETL the go-to engine for all transformation needs. Alex shared in her use case an example where they were forced to go to MySQL instead of Magic ETL. Our goal from the product side is to make Magic ETL the most desirable go-to engine that is simple to use and can transform anything in the manner you need to transform. We've had the new Magic ETL being used by a lot of customers for some time now. We've received a lot of positive feedback. Here's one example of a customer, Grant Smith, who was using Magic ETL. He found that it has saved him countless of hours of work on several data flows. The inclusion of formulas makes joins far more powerful and simplified. That's just one example of many where customers are excited about this new functionality. The new Magic ETL is too big to talk about in one short 10-15 minute section. So I'm going to be speaking to strictly the highlights of what I think are the most exciting and of significant impact to you as part of this new feature. So here you'll see what is included. I plan to discuss all of this in a demo. A few things to call out first. There are some small UI changes. You'll see that there are now curved and colored lines. We color those lines by data source, and they are curved for easier visibility, as well as we have some new tile categories here. The first thing that I'd like to call out with the new Magic is this engine is significantly faster in most every use case. Performance improvement will vary based off of data flow definition, but I encourage you to simply flip the switch and you'll see dramatic improvement by simply flipping this toggle switch right here. Try the new Magic ETL. One other thing that is awesome about this new feature is we have this auto append processing. What that means is in the new Magic ETL, where possible, we will only load and process the data that is relevant to the transforms taking place. In the legacy Magic ETL, we would always upload all data, reprocess it, and then upload that back to the output data set. Whereas with the new Magic ETL, we will only upload the relevant data and auto append that to the row. So it's this exact same data in your output, but the transformation time takes significantly less. On that thread of increased performance with append processing, we now offer dataset views as inputs. So views, this new feature, allows for you to select a view as an input. So when you come in here, you can filter to type dataset view, and then you can use a view to filter, aggregate, perform row-by-row calculations prior to bringing it into Magic ETL. Magic ETL is still the significantly faster option here, but if you're working with a 500 million row data set, highly encourage you filtering out unnecessary rows prior to bringing that into the new Magic ETL, and doing so will dramatically increase your performance and decrease your runtime for that data flow. And the next thing that I think most people will find most useful, and Alex anecdotally spoke to this, is the add formula tile. This is far and away one of my favorite, it is my favorite tile in Magic ETL. I came from a MySQL background. I worked as an analyst before. We used MySQL for everything. So coming to Domo and learning Magic ETL took some adapting on my part. Now with the add formula tile, this is so much easier to do for the MySQL power user. We have this row by row expression evaluator that supports 190, 200 plus functions. The list is constantly growing. That allows you to perform more transformations that otherwise couldn't be done in Magic ETL. For example, case statements. Now you can write complex case statements into your formula box here and that'll evaluate in a row by row operation. It's a game changer when it comes to the new Magic ETL. This allows you to do MySQL expressions directly into your ETL canvas. So for example, you can perform complex case statements, statistical utility functions, time value money operations with MySQL syntax directly into Magic ETL. And one thing I love about that is that you can create a new column or modify existing columns, or you can create a new column and then modify that column in a subsequent formula in the add formula tile. So for example, you'll see here I have this demand planner. I can then reference that demand planner in my new column below profit margin if I so desired. What's more is you have these inline previews that allows for you to quickly see what your formula is doing. Or if you wanted to expand to a full formula editor, you have that similar beast mode experience where you can type in your case statements, your complex MySQL syntax with more bandwidth to view and troubleshoot. One important thing to note here is that the add formula tile is a row by row expression evaluator. So you have to think to yourself, what is my output going to look like? Am I trying to do simple row by row operations, or do I want my output to be aggregated or a different row count in some way? If it does need to be aggregated, then you should go to the group by tile. The group by tile now supports aggregations as well as expression support. So you can still do all that same stuff you did in add formula on the group by tile. And this allows for you to do sum, percentile, median. Those aggregate functions are accomplishable here. And then just icing on the cake here, if you were to come to the filter rows tile, whereas before filtering on something as simple as this expression, region does not equal northwest, northeast, and inventory category equals toys, would have taken you like 15 mouse clicks. Now with the new Magic ETL, you can type that in super quick with your MySQL syntax and write these complex, powerful filter formulas in seconds. Additionally, the new Magic ETL allows for advanced transform settings. So what that means is you can come in here to the input dataset tile and specify what to do if your data type doesn't match. If we try to read it in and we interpret it as a timestamp, but you know that that isn't a timestamp, you can specify what it should be read in as well as what to do if it is not. So if it's a bad value, a null value, would you prefer to set that value to null? Would you prefer to stop the data flow, remove the whole row? This really helps streamline troubleshooting as well as be able to know exactly where your data broke if you wanted to make those as null and then have an if null statement with the add formula tile to a separate data set, output data set. It makes the whole troubleshooting process so much easier. This is available on the column level as well as the data flow, the whole data flow level. So you can specify that here with these global transform settings. I have found to be most impactful for me is if you're an enterprise organization, the legacy Magic ETL performed your date time operations in UTC. Now with the new Magic ETL performs those by default in your company time zone selected in Domo admin. But now if you wanted to make sure that your transformations are performing in a specific time zone, if all the data flow is the same, you come into this modal, this pop-up, this box, and you can specify where you want it to occur. So you can see here that our current is America Denver, but if I want this to perform like the legacy behavior, all I have to do is type in UTC, and now this will run exactly the same as the legacy Magic ETL. One more way I feel this is pretty cool is that if I were to come in and change that, you can see here the time of where I'm at right now is 12:37 p.m. Mountain time. And I have this function that says current time now. That would normally return 12:36 Mountain time, but since I have this pop-up box pulling up and the time zone set to Europe, Paris, that's now pulling up the same time at 10 p.m. That's huge for making a time zone or locale aware system that just is a step closer to time zone handling in Domo. And that's only the tip of the iceberg. There's so much more in the new Magic ETL. I can't iterate enough. This engine has been a game changer for me and let me perform more stuff in Domo that I'm confident you will find to be a huge benefit and just lowers the barrier to entry to Magic and just makes it feel comfortable, particularly if you're comfortable with MySQL. So we just discussed all of these that's on this what's included slide. Auto append optimizations, faster run times, but this next slide shows everything else that's included in Magic ETL. There's new tiles we didn't discuss, preview and data tabs. The join tile had remarkable improvements. Really encourage you to check it out. One thing I wanted to take a quick pause on here and communicate is that we have a lot of documentation in knowledge base that helps you understand what's going on with Magic ETL, how does this apply to me. But the article every single person should look to before upgrading their Magic ETL data flows is this upgrading to the new Magic ETL help article. There are some small but significant behavioral differences. I mentioned one earlier, meaning we perform date time operations in your company's set time zone rather than UTC. So if you just go through and blindly flip the switch on your flows, you could unknowingly have different output data. This outlines all of those small changes. Most all flows can upgrade just fine by flipping the switch, but please read that article before you just blindly start upgrading those. As well as here's a what's new in the new Magic ETL article that just highlights all the differences in terms of new functionality you should check out. And with that, we'd like to wrap up our presentation. Once again, I'm Justin Milheim, the Data Flows Product Manager. We're grateful you could attend and appreciate you testing out this new functionality.
And I'm Alex Long, Marketing Operations Manager at Korn Ferry. Thank you so much for attending, and we'll be in the live chat answering questions.